Hey everybody, this is Pastor Chris. I'm coming to you live from Lexington Park Baptist Church. This is PC Studios. It is July the 25th, 2023. How in the world are you doing? A shout out to everybody. I hope you're blessed, highly favored by God. I see Sherry, Sandy, Annette, Sheila, Sherry, and Keith, and there's a couple others out there online. Thank you all for signing in. Thank you for being on the program. If you want to be live with us, we're at facebook.com/Pastor Chris McCombs. But if you're signing in on YouTube or other Facebook channels or Twitch, thank you for being with us today. Listen, man, I came down with a cold. It's not COVID or anything else, thank goodness. But I was pretty down. Went home a little bit last night. Still have some drainage in my throat, sinus stuff, and Mucinex taking care of that. But man, it's just crazy. I don't know if I got it from all the germs with all the kids running around all week. But anyway, I'm glad to be here with you today. Had staff meeting, good stuff going on. Did after action review. Got a lot of stuff planned through Christmas today with my staff, and we got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. But still just celebrating in that moment of Vacation Bible School. 28 decisions, 25 during the week, 3 on Sunday morning, and 2 of them actually filled out the card for me. That's good, so I can follow up with them. And then I've got, about 5 or 6 of them are from other churches. I passed it off to their parents to handle, and they said they were going to follow through with baptism for the kids. And then we got the 5 or so not from our church, and then the 12 or so from our church. So I'm excited of what Christmas is going to be and stuff. So, hey, shout out to Sheila. I know you're sick under the weather. Hope you're doing better. I don't know if anybody else got it. I know Brooke got sick last week during the actual Vacation Bible School. So Keith, tell Brooke she gave it to all of us. I don't know if that's where it started, but anyway. And I just said that online. I do apologize. So, hey, let's finish up on this Vacation Bible School theme of Psalm 25 that I preached on a couple weeks ago. Let's look at that. And today I want us to talk about the warnings and dangers. If you're in a game and you're playing a game, there's always like warnings or dangers or there's cautions. There's things if you land on this space or you do this, bad things happen. Every game kind of has that, right? Like even like a Monopoly, if you land on the community chest, you might draw a bad card and pay money. You might win, but you might have to owe money for a community event, or you may land on a property and somebody owns it and you pay them money. Or you might go to jail, get on the jail space. So every game in life is the same way, right? You land on something or you do something and it can cause problems. So I think David did a brilliant job in chapter 25 of the Psalms telling us that there are warnings in life. So I want to read some of those for you today, 16 through 21. We may not get to all of them. We may deal with some of them tomorrow. But turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am alone and I'm afflicted. The distress of my heart increased, brings me out of my sufferings. Consider my affliction and trouble, and forgive all my sins. Consider my enemies, they are numerous and they hate me violently. Guard me, rescue me, do not let me be disgraced, for I take refuge in you. May integrity and what is right watch over me, for I wait for you. God, redeem Israel from all its distresses. So think in this last note, it's kind of almost depressing what David's writing here in these final verses of this very powerful psalm, where we're supposed to be following God's ways. Remember, he started off the whole thing in verse 1. He's got enemies that want to disgrace him, but God, I know if I trust you, you're going to get me through it. Remember that. Keep that in the whole motif for this whole text. That's why David says, look, because these people are coming at me, I need to make sure, in verse 4, right, the one that's the theme of the whole psalm, of the whole VBS was, because I want to be on your paths, I want to follow your ways, Lord. So David had enemies, and I said in my sermon a couple weeks ago, I didn't really know I had enemies until I became a pastor. When I was a military guy and just regular Chris McCombs or whatever, when I was just serving in the church, I didn't really have. But when you become a pastor and you're making decisions and you're leading, it's something happens, man. It's spiritual warfare, which I'm preaching on this Sunday, by the way. It's spiritual warfare. And David knew this. David knew it well. There are real enemies in this world that don't want to follow me, that don't want to agree with me. And this is when he's running from Saul. So do the background of that. And then we get into following our God's ways. And then he gets to this text. So we got to have to know that background. And so when we're going deeper. Oh, side note, Chase Rabbit. I had somebody Sunday, which I didn't even know watches my show. They must watch it later. They said, I just love what you do. You take what you preach on and then you expound upon it throughout the week. It's very beneficial. If people really want to know what their preacher's teaching, they can get the sermon on Sunday, but then have it expounded upon even at a grade level. This is kind of like a Bible study. Think about it. I put so much time into a sermon, which I put a lot of time into sermons, and then to have the opportunity throughout the week, if people want to learn more, they can go deeper here with word of encouragement. And so I like how this has gone. I'm not out there to get, to whatever they call that when you get all those hits, right? I'm not to be somebody famous. I want to be famous about Jesus teaching you God's word. And if this benefits your life, then this word of encouragement is always worth it. So in the fine print, we see, listen, we're all playing the same game of life for him. And Samuel, when I play games with Samuel, he plays all these card games. And so whether I don't even know the names of the games, but I play them with him. And every card has instructions on it. And so I'll get frustrated because I don't know how to play these things, man. If you play this card and you play it with these other cards, it then does something to these cards. And if he has a certain deck and I play cards in a certain way, I can defeat his deck or I can block attacks or whatever. I can't keep up with it. But he goes, Dad, read the card. The card explains. So he's basically saying, if you read the card tells you what it does. And he's right, but I still need help. I mean, I read the card, okay. Card explains what it does. But that's true in life, right? In a game, you read the fine print. And so here in the fine print, David's talking about dangers in life. He's talking about bad things. And he does some things here. I want to get some key words. He's afflicted. He's distressed, he's suffering, he's troubled, he has sin, he has enemies, he's hated, and he has disgrace. All of these can be found in this text. I want to talk about those dangers right now. And so when we look at verse 16, turn to me and be gracious. He's asking God to be gracious. I'll deal with that tomorrow because I want to deal with the good stuff tomorrow. Because there's also good spaces you can land on. So we need to know, even though there's bad, we need to know the good. So he says, listen, I am alone and I'm afflicted. Have you ever been depressed? Maybe you have. And some people, listen, I acknowledge some people suffer from clinical depression. Some people go through bad seasons in life and they become very depressed, like the loss of a loved one, the loss of a spouse. I mean, it might be depressing. I saw somebody post today and suddenly there was silence in their home. I'm not going to say who, but I know they're in the audience. Your grandkids leave or your kids, like my home, empty nest. I'm not quite there yet. My kids are still around, even though they're grown. They got jobs and they live at home some, and they're making, they're out there working in the workforce. But the home life changes, right? That can be depressing, right? Also there are things in life that depress us, but there's also real depression. David is in a funk. Let's be honest. He feels alone and he feels depressed. We should be able to relate to that. All of us can to some degree, right? I mean, I'm pretty energetic. I pretty much do my own thing. Thank you, Sandy, for owning that statement. It was profound. It hit me. You're right. I mean, we go from the craziness of life and the energy of kids like VBS, and then whoosh, like next Sunday is not going to be on steroids, right? Next Sunday is not going to have the same hype as this last Sunday. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's indifferent. It's just part of life. So we can't get depressed. We can't just cling to the moments for that excitement, like that manic depression, right? So David's like, I'm afflicted. I'm alone, and I'm depressed. And it's right there in verse 16. But then look, my distress of my heart increases, and it brings me, so the distresses of my heart increase. God, bring me out of my sufferings. So David's saying, I'm suffering. I'm suffering right here, right now. I'm hurting, God. I'm in a bad place, man. And I feel alone. I know you're with me, God, but I feel alone. I know I trust you, but I feel disgraced. There are people coming at me trying to hurt me. And here I am, God, my heart, the distress of my heart is great. Let me share, and I know everybody's got their own thing. I just want to share a pastor's heart with you here. Nobody knows the pain of a pastor unless you walked in the shoes of a pastor. You can't know the distress. When you all hurt, when that bad health report comes, I put my game face on. I'm positive, I'm praying, but man, I'm concerned. My heart hurts. Or when I'm out visiting Mel this week, and Mel's in hospice, and he's on his deathbed. Let's just be real. You know, he's lived 86 years or whatever his life. He's a good man, a godly man. I call him Papa Smurf. But he sleeps all the time. Took him some Chick-fil-A just a couple days ago, and he ate 2 little bites of one of those chicken mini things. And that's all I could get him to eat. He stays awake just to say hey, tells me he loves me. I pray with him, read scripture, and he's back to sleep again. And so it's hard. I'm sure that Teresa could relate to this, right? And anybody that's gone through what I just described, right? You know that feeling, that distress of your heart. Well, those things distress me. They do. It distresses me to see when people don't get along in the church, or when people falsely accuse me sometimes of things, or have their own agendas, and they cause problems, and there's gossip and there's slander. These things are not just of the world; they also come into the church, and those things are distressful to my heart, and it increases, and I feel pain sometimes. So I know you can take that to your family now. Everybody's got issues, whether it's with your family, it's in church, or it's at work. There are things that break your heart, whether it's in society and culture. Man, am I distressed over society and culture. I'll be honest, I do not like the politics of Maryland. I do not like our governor. He looks good, he's polished, he's pretty smile, he's a pretty face, and he says things, but his policies are distressful, man. Wanting to be a harbor for abortion and for genitalia mutilation and indoctrinations in the schools. I mean, and taking away the right to carry your weapon to protect yourself in public, whatever. You just go, the list just is massive. And he sits there and smiles. This is good. No, this is not good. You know, so those things distress me, you know, in society. I don't like that. So I share that, not what you'd agree with me on everything, just to share with you. I go through that. You go through that. We all go through things that cause distress to our heart, and they increase the more evil they are, and they come out of our sufferings. We suffer in this world. Consider, he says in verse 18, consider my affliction and trouble, forgive my sins. So David is saying, I'm afflicted. I've been wounded. I've been offended. I've had people come at me, and these afflictions are great, God, and I'm in trouble. I don't know what to do, God. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you're like, God, I don't know what to do. I'm in trouble here. Maybe not even self-infliction. This is not self-infliction at this point with David. We'll talk about sin in a minute. That's where we're going to end. But sometimes it's self-infliction. But how many of you have been afflicted by others? I have. I've been wounded by others. Man, I can't keep the amount of times a church member's wounded me. And probably I've wounded you too. I mean, I will tell you this, I know my heart. I never would intentionally hurt anyone. Please hear my heart there. Never, ever, 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 ever. If I say something and it's gruff or abrupt or whatever, please say, Pastor, can you say please? Or did you mean it that way? I would never do that. Never. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day. I had to do a funeral Sunday, and I went to their house, and they're newer to our church, and their grandmother died. And I went over, and we were talking about something, and said, yeah, I had to really, go in and challenge them if something happened at Chick-fil-A. And I said, no, I didn't do it mean. She goes, no, I know you wouldn't. I could see you going in and really saying, hey, this is unacceptable. But she at least knew my heart and I knew you would never say anything mean. I appreciate that. And for you, I want you to know, for the most part, I know that about many of you. Sometimes hurting people hurt people. And sometimes we all have different personalities, and we need to understand each other. I think if we would seek to understand each other, there would be less affliction within the church, and maybe less affliction within our families if we really know the heart of each other. And so long as the person's good in their heart, right? We're all sinful. We'll get to that again in a minute. But the affliction is there. The trouble is there. And David's like, God, I need help. Help me. So maybe in life you feel that way. God, I'm in trouble. I'm afflicted. Now let's talk about self-affliction. Right there, he even mentions this in there. He goes, and forgive me of all my sins. This is really important. Listen, you all, we live in a culture that denies a lot of things. And I think of this song that just came out about small towns. I don't want to get into that. I posted something on Facebook. I was like, I don't listen to country music, so I was like, I gotta go watch this thing. And I did. And I thought it was a great video, man. And it was a great song. I think I had one bad word in it, but it was basically about how our culture has become so immoral, and that stuff doesn't happen in small towns. Don't try that in a small town. The idea is a great idea. I mean, yeah, obviously bad things happen in small towns and big towns, but the riots and all the crime and everything that's going on in our culture, and the drugs and the sexualization and all this stuff, don't do that. We don't fall for that. And we can still have God. I think we need to go back to church. We need to get back to the Ten Commandments. We need to get back to knowing we are sinners. Listen, we are sinners. David's acknowledging this. God, forgive me my sins. We need to do that as a nation. Could you imagine a president that would do that? Could you imagine if Wes Moore, our governor, got up and said, forgive us for abortion. Forgive us for this genitalia mutilation stuff that we're doing. Forgive us, God. We have abandoned your ways. Wow. I'd be the biggest fan of Wes Moore. He's not going to do that because he doesn't believe he's in sin. And that's what happens to a lot of us. But David acknowledges it. God, I've sinned. Some of this stuff I own. Forgive me. Forgive me. So I want to tell you something. Go to God. Ask him to forgive you. If some of the stuff you're going through self-inflicted, maybe bad financial decisions, maybe bad things you've said, maybe you've said things you shouldn't have said to others, maybe you've not given your marriage the effort it needed, maybe you've not loved on people like you would, maybe you've listened to gossip and let it creep into your heart, and now your perception of another person's changed because of what you heard, but you don't even know if it's true. Listen, go and say, God, forgive me of my sins. Forgive me of my self-afflictions. Forgive me so that I can be made right with you. And God, help me. So I want to go over all the things that David did so that you can look at this in greater detail. Go back and look at this stuff. So he was afflicted. He was distressed. He had suffering. He had trouble. He had sin. He had enemies. There was hate towards him. There was disgrace. You find that all in chapter 25, especially verses 16 through 21. So may God help us with all those things. May we not be disgraced. May we not suffer. May our trouble not get the best of us. May we not be afflicted. May we not be depressed and distressed. But may God deliver us. And that's what I want to talk about tomorrow. Just as much as all those things are real in life, there is forgiveness. And that forgiveness changes to a lot of good things that God wants to do for us that I want to speak about tomorrow. So even though we have it rough, we have a God we can trust. And I want to encourage you, put your trust in him, and he can deliver you from a lot of this stuff. It's not going to stop it from happening. There's going to be disgrace. There's going to be distress. We're free from sin, the slavery of sin, but we still are prone to sin, but we're not slaves to it anymore. When I came to that realization, that was huge. Why do I keep sinning, God? Well, Chris, you're not a slave to sin anymore. That's another topic we can talk about. You're not a slave to sin anymore. You're free of that, but you still sin. There's still, you're still a sinner, but I'm not enslaved to sin. I can be free of the bondage of sin and no longer be enslaved to it. So can you. So we can be free from those things, and we need to know that and acknowledge that. Hey, I hope this helps somebody. I hope it's encouraging, even though there's bad sufferings and distresses and hatreds, and there's bad people out there, and there's bad mojo going on out there, and there's evil plots, and there's evil in our culture, and we know that, and there's bad stuff that even happens in church and our families and all kinds of work and everything, right? It's real. And when we know that, we can acknowledge that, and then we can do something. We can cry out to God for help, and we can live his ways, like 25:4 says, right? Lord, teach me your ways. Lord, teach me your paths. So may we follow Jesus that way. Hey, again, I hope this encourages you. Have a great day, everybody. Hope to see you here tomorrow and here at noon. God bless you. Remember these two realities. God loves you. So do I. You take care. See you tomorrow.